The night sky over Montecito was heavy with silence. Not the kind that soothes, but the kind that suffocates, where even the crickets seem to know that something terrible is about to unfold. Inside the mansion that once represented freedom, laughter, and rebellion, Prince Harry sat in darkness, staring at the faint blue glow of his phone. The message on the screen was short, cold, and final. Meghan had filed for divorce. For a long time, he didn't move. He didn't speak. The only sound was the ticking of the antique clock Meghan had once bought for their wedding anniversary, the one engraved with the words, "Our forever begins today." But now that forever was gone. Just like that. Gone. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What happened to the man who walked away from the most powerful family on earth for love? What happened to the couple who promised the world they would rewrite the rules of royalty? And more hauntingly, what would he do now, when even the person he left everything for had left him? The truth, as royal insiders whisper, is darker than anyone imagined. Because this wasn't just a breakup. It was a collapse, a free fall from grace. And as the papers were filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, Harry made a decision that shocked everyone, including himself. He would go home, back to the UK, back to the brother he once called his best friend, back to the kingdom that had banished him. But what he didn't know then was that the gates of the royal world were no longer open to him. Not this time. Because when he finally reached out to Prince William, pleading for a chance to come home, the answer he received wasn't silence. It was rejection. A quiet, deliberate, devastating rejection. Before we get there, let's rewind a little. Let's go back to the moment the fairy tale began to crumble. Because this story, this entire royal implosion, didn't start with divorce papers. It started with secrets, with resentment, with two brothers who once walked side by side through grief, now standing on opposite sides of an emotional war. The last time Harry saw William in person, the tension was already unbearable. It was during King Charles's coronation, and though cameras captured smiles, royal insiders claimed the atmosphere behind the scenes was icy. William barely acknowledged his brother. Kate kept her distance. And Harry, who flew in alone and left immediately after the ceremony, looked like a man walking through ghosts. He wasn't part of the royal circle anymore. He was the ghost haunting it. Fast forward to now, and Meghan Markle's alleged decision to walk away. Reports say the couple had been living separate lives for months, with Meghan focused on rebuilding her Hollywood career and Harry clinging to fading dreams of reconciliation. There were rumors of explosive fights, of lawyers quietly visiting Montecito, of arguments about money, image, and trust. The same media empire they once tried to control had turned against them, painting them as outcasts even in America. So when Meghan's team officially filed, Harry's world collapsed. But instead of anger, those close to him described something else: desperation. Because after years of burning bridges, there was only one place left that felt like home: the UK. And one person who could open the door back into that world: Prince William. Now imagine this moment. A late-night phone call, Harry's hands shaking as he scrolls through his contacts. The hesitation before pressing that name. The sound of the phone ringing across the Atlantic, through time zones and years of resentment. And then, finally, the voice on the other end. Calm. Controlled. "William." "Will, it's me," Harry reportedly said. There was a pause. One of those long, weighted pauses where silence speaks louder than words. "I need to come home. Just for a bit. I've lost everything, mate." It was the kind of call only brothers could understand. The kind of plea that cuts through pride. But instead of comfort, what came next stunned Harry into silence. William didn't say no right away. He didn't explode. He just exhaled slowly and said, "It's not a good time, Harry. You should stay where you are. Stay where you are." 6 words that would echo in Harry's mind for days. Because behind those 6 words was a message much deeper. You're not welcome here. And why would William say that? Was it anger, fear, or royal strategy? As we'll uncover, it was a mix of all 3, and something more dangerous. Something buried deep within the walls of Kensington Palace that no one outside the royal circle was supposed to know. Before we unravel that, let's pause and ask something that many of you watching right now might be thinking. Should William have let his brother come home? Or was he right to protect his family, his reputation, and the monarchy from more chaos? The royal household is a fortress, not just of marble and history, but of politics, power, and image. And right now, that fortress is fragile. King Charles is battling health issues that have kept the palace in cautious silence. Public trust in the monarchy has wavered, and William, as the future king, is under enormous pressure to appear strong, stable, and unshakable. So when Harry asked to return, a divorced prince, a global headline magnate, and a man the media had labeled a liability, William's instincts kicked in. Protect the crown at all costs. Still, it wasn't just duty that fueled his response. It was betrayal, years of it. From Oprah interviews to Netflix documentaries, Harry and Meghan had exposed the inner workings of royal life to the world. To William, it wasn't just storytelling. It was treason. Every private detail Harry revealed made reconciliation harder. Every emotional confession in front of cameras deepened the wound. So when the divorce news broke, William didn't see a broken brother. He saw another crisis waiting to happen. And yet, there's another side to this, one that insiders whisper about quietly. Despite everything, William still cares. He still remembers the boy he grew up with, the boy who lost his mother and stood beside him at her funeral. That's why his rejection hurt even more. Because it wasn't fueled by hate. It was fueled by heartbreak. Now, here's where the story takes a sharp turn. While Harry was trying to call William, royal staff at Kensington Palace were already discussing what to do if he showed up unannounced. According to leaked reports, one aide suggested a temporary accommodation could be arranged. Another said it was too risky, that public opinion would explode if Harry was seen near royal grounds so soon after a high-profile divorce. The tension in those meetings was electric. The question wasn't just whether Harry could come home, it was whether the monarchy could survive him doing so. And in the midst of this chaos, King Charles was caught between his sons once again. His heart said yes, his head said no. The monarchy cannot be seen as unstable, he was told. The narrative must remain controlled. But Charles, who has always longed for peace within his family, reportedly wanted to reach out. He even drafted a private message. It never got sent, because William intervened. Behind closed doors, he reportedly told his father, "You can't keep cleaning up his mess. If he wants to come home, he needs to prove he's changed. We can't do this again." It wasn't cruelty, it was exhaustion. After years of scandals, interviews, and tension, William was drawing a line. For the first time, the heir to the throne was no longer acting as a brother. He was acting as a king in training. But as every royal watcher knows, decisions made in silence have a way of echoing loudly. Because days later, details of the phone call, private, emotional, heartbreaking, began leaking to the press. Someone inside the royal circle had talked. Headlines erupted. Prince William refuses to help brother after divorce. Royal family split beyond repair. Harry left begging for shelter. The world watched as two brothers once inseparable became symbols of division. And here's where things get even more intriguing. Sources claim Meghan herself wasn't surprised by the rejection. In fact, she allegedly predicted it. In private conversations, she said to have told friends that William would never forgive Harry, that returning to the UK would only humiliate him further. And yet, Harry refused to believe it. Until now. But perhaps the most haunting part of this story isn't what William said. It's what he didn't say. Because beneath the politeness of royal language, behind the carefully chosen words, there was something unsaid, something that hinted at a deeper fear. A secret William was protecting not just from Harry, but from the world. And that secret? Well, that's where this story truly begins. Because what if William wasn't blocking his brother out of bitterness, but out of necessity? What if letting Harry back into the palace risked exposing something no one was supposed to see or know? Something that could shake the very foundation of the monarchy? The tension between duty and brotherhood has never been greater. The stakes have never been higher. And as Harry stares at his silent phone in that dark Montecito mansion, one question haunts him. What did I do that was so unforgivable? The answer lies behind the walls of Kensington Palace. And in the next chapter, we'll step inside those walls, where royal aides, family members, and even the king himself are forced to make a decision that will define the future of the crown. Because as one royal insider put it, when Harry begged to come home, the monarchy had to decide whether to open the door or lock it forever. It always begins quietly, doesn't it? Not with screaming, not with shattered glass or grand betrayals, but with silence. A silence that creeps in like fog, soft at first, almost unnoticeable, until one morning you realize it's everywhere. That was Harry's life in Montecito. The laughter had faded. The interviews had slowed. The promises, the plans, the smiles, all gone. And what replaced them wasn't anger. It was emptiness. The cameras outside their mansion had grown tired of waiting. The media that once chased every move of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex had moved on to newer scandals. But inside those walls, a different kind of storm brewed, one that no paparazzi lens could capture. Meghan was no longer the affectionate partner the public saw in those first heady years of freedom. She was distant, strategic, always on her phone, taking calls that ended the moment Harry entered the room. He noticed everything. The faint smell of perfume that wasn't hers lingering after late-night business meetings. The growing number of projects she refused to discuss with him. And worst of all, the look in her eyes. That cold, rehearsed calm of someone who's already made up their mind. Have you ever watched someone fall out of love with you in real time? It's a strange, slow death. There's no sound, no announcement, just withdrawal. That was what Harry lived with every day. Friends close to the couple noticed the change first. The invitations that once came to them as a pair were now addressed only to her. She began appearing at events solo, glamorous, smiling, but alone. And when Harry did appear, he seemed lost, like a man attending someone else's party. Inside sources whispered that Meghan had already consulted divorce attorneys as early as February, long before the rumors broke. The cracks, they said, had turned into fractures. Financial pressures were growing. Netflix had pulled back on several projects. Spotify had walked away. And suddenly, the empire that was supposed to make them independent from the royal family was crumbling. Meghan reportedly blamed Harry, his emotional instability, his refusal to move on from the royal drama, his nostalgia for a life she wanted to forget. But Harry saw it differently. He thought they could fix it. That love, the kind that made him leave everything behind, could still save them. So when he confronted her one late night in March, it wasn't with anger, it was with fear. "What's happening to us?" he asked. His voice was calm, almost pleading. Meghan didn't look up from her laptop. "We've outgrown each other, Harry. It happens." Outgrown. The word stung. This was the woman he defended against the entire British establishment. The woman he'd called his soulmate on global television. And now, she was talking about their marriage like it was an outdated fashion line. He tried to reason with her. He reminded her of their vows, their shared mission, their children. But she just sighed, shut her laptop, and said quietly, "You wanted freedom. So here it is." That night, Harry sat alone in the garden, under the same stars that once seemed to promise them a better life. But now even the California sky felt indifferent. He poured himself a drink, something he hadn't done in months, and stared at the reflection of the pool lights dancing in the glass. Freedom had never felt so much like exile. The next morning, she was gone. Her side of the closet half empty. A few suitcases missing. A handwritten note left on the dresser. "You need to find yourself before you can be with anyone." No signature. No goodbye. Just an echo. When the news broke days later that Meghan had officially filed for divorce, Harry didn't respond publicly. The palace didn't comment. The Sussex team said only that the couple have chosen to part amicably. But those close to Harry knew the truth. He was unraveling. He stopped taking calls. He canceled interviews. He even skipped a charity event he'd promised to attend. For days, he barely left his room. Then came the realization. He had no one left to call except the family he'd betrayed. Imagine the humiliation. The man who declared independence from his royal roots now crawling back, not as a prince, but as a broken husband. Still, pride doesn't feed the soul. And in his darkest moment, he wanted something simple: home. But home wasn't the same anymore. The UK had moved on. William had stepped fully into his role as heir. Kate was loved more than ever. The country that once adored the spare now viewed him as an outsider. Harry knew this, but he convinced himself family would triumph over pride. That's when he made the call. He stared at the phone for nearly an hour before pressing the number. He didn't even know if it would connect. They hadn't spoken directly since the coronation. But when the line clicked, Harry's heart raced. "William, it's me," he said, voice trembling. "I need to come home, just for a while." On the other end, silence. A silence so long Harry thought the call had dropped. Then a breath. A slow, heavy breath. "Harry, William finally said, his tone neutral, measured, almost diplomatic. What's going on? She's left. It's over. I don't know what to do. Another pause. The kind that slices through hope. I'm sorry to hear that, William replied quietly. But this isn't the time to come back. Harry's throat tightened. I'm not asking for anything, well, just to see you. To see Dad. I just want to come home. You can't, William said softly. Not right now. 6 words. 6 small, ordinary words that carried centuries of royal weight. Because not right now didn't mean not yet. It meant never. When the call ended, Harry sat motionless. The rejection cut deeper than any headline. For years, he'd convinced himself that if everything fell apart, his brother would still be there. But that illusion was gone now. The door to the royal world wasn't just closed, it was locked. The question is, why? Why would William, who once shielded his younger brother from the press, now turn him away when he needed help the most? Was it bitterness over the past? Fear of scandal? Or something the world didn't yet know? Insiders say it was all of it, and more. Because that phone call wasn't just a family dispute. It was a political decision, a matter of royal survival. The monarchy was already walking a tightrope, with Charles's health uncertain and public sentiment fragile. Bringing Harry back into the fold during a high-profile divorce could have shattered that balance completely. And yet, for William, it wasn't only about image. It was about trust. Too many times, private conversations had ended up in documentaries, memoirs, or podcasts. Every word, every emotional confession, every family detail had been turned into content. William couldn't risk it again. Still, behind his stern response, there was something else: pain. People close to him described the days after that call as tense. He reportedly told aides, "It's not easy saying no to your brother when he's begging." But as future king, he didn't have the luxury of emotion. He had to protect the institution. Meanwhile, Harry was spiraling. He started reaching out to old friends in London, military mates, former staffers, even a few journalists he once trusted. Most were sympathetic but cautious. They knew William's stance, and they didn't want to cross that line. One friend said, "He sounded like a man standing in the ruins of his own life." And maybe that's exactly what he was. But something else was happening behind the scenes. While Harry tried to find a way home, Kensington Palace was already preparing for damage control. Advisors feared the press would find out about the brothers' phone call, and they were right to worry. Within days, snippets of the conversation began leaking to tabloids. No one knew who talked. But the narrative was already forming. Harry begs to return. William says no. The headlines spread like wildfire. Public opinion split instantly. Some said William was heartless. Others said he was wise. The palace remained silent. Harry didn't issue a statement either. But that silence only fueled speculation. And Meghan? She was silent too, but her actions spoke volumes. She reportedly flew to New York the same week the divorce filing went public, meeting with her PR team to shape the narrative. Insiders claim she planned to control her own story before the palace did. For her, the end of the marriage wasn't tragedy, it was strategy. So there he was, Harry, alone, unwanted by the woman he loved, and unwelcome in the family he left. For a man who once had the world at his feet, he was now a stranger in both worlds. And yet, he wasn't ready to give up. Not yet, because somewhere deep down, he still believed William would change his mind. He began writing a letter, handwritten, personal, heartfelt. No titles, no accusations. Just 2 brothers, one reaching out to the other. But before he could send it, something else happened. Something that would twist the story even further. A leak. Not from the tabloids this time, but from inside the royal circle. A source claimed that if Harry returned, certain family truths might come to light. Truths that could damage the monarchy irreparably. And suddenly, William's refusal began to make sense. This wasn't just about bad blood. It was about secrets. Secrets Meghan knew. Secrets Harry didn't. Secrets buried deep within the palace walls. So when Harry finally looked up from that unfinished letter, one thought chilled him. Maybe his brother wasn't blocking him out of anger. Maybe he was protecting him. But protecting him from what? Have you ever had a moment when your entire life hung on the sound of someone else's voice? One call, one answer, one tone that could either break you or save you. That's where Harry found himself, sitting in the dim light of his Montecito study, clutching his phone like it was the last rope keeping him from falling. He'd made the decision. He was calling his brother. Not his father, not his royal advisors, not anyone in PR. Just William, the one person he once trusted with everything. But as the phone began to ring, doubt crept in. Would he even pick up? Would the future king of England answer a call from the brother he'd spent years trying to forget? The sound of the ring echoed through the room. Each vibration felt like a heartbeat. And then, a click. Hello. That familiar voice. Calm, cautious, British to the bone. Harry froze. How do you start a conversation when the last words you shared were filled with anger and blame? Will, it's me, he said finally. Silence. Just breathing on the other end. I know it's late. I didn't know who else to call. William didn't interrupt. He didn't hang up. He just listened. That, in itself, was something. I think I've made a mess of everything, Harry continued. She's gone. Meghan filed. It's over. There it was, the confession. Words that hung heavy between them like a ghost of everything they'd lost. William's response came after what felt like an eternity. I heard. His voice was low, steady, but colder than Harry remembered. You heard? From who? The press. Dad mentioned it too. Are you all right? Harry almost laughed. The absurdity of it. All right. No, not even close. I thought maybe I could come home for a bit. Clear my head. I don't want anything. I just need. You can't. 2 words. Sharp. Final. They sliced through Harry like glass. Can't. Harry echoed. What do you mean, can't? William hesitated, and Harry could almost picture him. Pacing, one hand on his hip, the other clutching the phone, expression torn between concern and restraint. It's not a good time, William said finally. There's too much going on here. The family's under enough pressure as it is. Pressure? Harry's voice cracked. You think I don't know pressure? My life's been falling apart in front of the entire world. I'm not asking for a title, Will. I'm asking to see my family. You made it clear you didn't want to be part of this family, William replied. You told the world that. Harry exhaled sharply. I told the world the truth. And now you want back in? That line hit like a slap. William's tone wasn't cruel, but it was laced with exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who'd tried, over and over, to hold together something that was already broken. You think I haven't missed you? William added quietly. But every time we speak, it ends up in the press, Harry. Every private thing we share becomes public. How am I supposed to trust you now? Harry clenched his jaw. I never leaked those stories. Meghan might have. Exactly, William interrupted. That's the point. You can't separate yourself from the chaos anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. 2 brothers, once inseparable, now strangers bound only by blood and grief. Finally, Harry said, I'm not calling for pity. I'm calling because I don't know where else to go. I thought, after everything, we could still be brothers. For a brief moment, William's voice softened. You'll always be my brother. But you chose a different life. You walked away. You made your bed, Harry. I walked away for love. Harry snapped. You know what it was like here. You saw what they did to her, to me. I couldn't survive in that cage. And look where freedom got you, William said, quieter now, but his words carried more weight than anger ever could. That was the moment it hit Harry. The wall between them wasn't built from hatred. It was built from truth. A truth too painful to face. They were no longer 2 boys walking behind their mother's coffin, bound by loss. They were 2 men, shaped by it differently, one hardened, one broken. William sighed. Look, I can't make this easy. The family's fragile right now. The last thing we need is more headlines. Harry swallowed hard. So that's it. You're protecting the crown from me. I'm protecting everyone from more damage, William said. You need to take care of yourself where you are. Harry's voice trembled. So I'm not welcome? William didn't answer. Well, are you there? I have to go, came the quiet reply. Take care of yourself, Harry. And then, click. The line went dead. For a long time, Harry just sat there, phone still pressed to his ear. The silence in that room was suffocating. He replayed every word in his mind. The pauses, the tone, the restraint. He'd expected anger, maybe even shouting. But what he got was worse. Detachment. The kind of cold distance that says, you're not part of this world anymore. He set the phone down, walked outside, and looked toward the horizon. The Pacific stretched endlessly before him. Beautiful, vast, and empty. It was freedom, yes, but it was also loneliness. Inside, A framed photo of him and William as children still sat on the desk. Two boys in matching suits, laughing under the summer sun. He turned it face down. Meanwhile, in London, William stood by the window of his Kensington office, phone still in hand, staring at the gardens below. He wasn't made of stone, no matter what people thought. That call shook him. But he had responsibilities now, to his father, to his wife, to the institution. Compassion was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Is everything all right, sir?" one of his aides asked from the doorway. William nodded, though his eyes said otherwise. Yes, everything's fine. But everything wasn't fine. Because the moment he hung up, a different kind of panic set in. Not about Harry's emotional state, but about the implications. What if Harry didn't take the rejection quietly? What if this call, this personal exchange, somehow leaked? Within hours, Kensington staff were alerted. All communication regarding Harry was to go through official channels. No direct contact. No comments. Damage control mode had begun. And somewhere across the ocean, Harry was already replaying the conversation for the 10th time, trying to find hope between the words. Maybe William didn't mean it. Maybe he was under pressure. Maybe Dad didn't even know about the call. Hope is a cruel thing. It keeps you believing even when the evidence screams otherwise. Harry tried calling again the next day. No answer. He sent a message, short, desperate. "Please, I need to come home." No reply. He called again. Still nothing. After the third attempt, the number went straight to voicemail. And that's when it hit him. William had blocked him. The realization was crushing. Not because of the technology, but because of what it symbolized. Blocking wasn't silence. It was finality. A digital wall that said, "You no longer exist in my world." Harry stared at the screen, heart pounding. How had it come to this? Two brothers raised to be each other's keepers, now reduced to blocked numbers and press leaks. But what Harry didn't know was that the decision to block him wasn't made lightly. It wasn't just William's impulse. It was discussed, advised, approved. Inside Kensington Palace, that one click on a phone symbolized something far bigger, a royal lockdown. Because at that very moment, word of Harry's emotional call had already reached the palace staff, and the machinery of control was kicking in. Advisors feared a new storm of media frenzy. There was talk of headlines. Harry returns home heartbroken. William refuses shelter. The palace couldn't afford another narrative spiraling out of control, so they shut it down. Completely. And as Harry sat there, staring at the message failed to deliver notification, a different kind of thought began to form, a dangerous one. If he couldn't go home through his brother, maybe he'd go around him. Maybe he'd go to the one person who still had the power to override William, the king himself. But he had no idea that within the palace walls, a quiet war had already begun, one that would pit father against son, brother against brother, and loyalty against love. It was just past 7:30 in the evening at Kensington Palace when the call came through. Not from Harry this time, but from one of the king's private secretaries. The message was short, clipped, and formal. "The Duke of Sussex has reached out to His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales seeking accommodation in the UK." That single sentence set off a chain reaction inside the palace walls. Doors closed. Lights dimmed. Advisors and aides began whispering in corridors. Within an hour, a private meeting was called, one that would determine Harry's fate. Picture this. Behind the heavy oak doors of a discreet meeting room in Kensington Palace, a group of the most powerful figures in the royal circle sat in tense silence. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken emotion. William was there, arms folded, face expressionless. Catherine entered quietly, her presence calm but concerned. Around them sat senior aides, legal advisors, and the family's longtime communications director. The question on everyone's mind: what do we do if Harry comes back? But before anyone could answer, William spoke first. His tone was steady, but his words carried an edge that silenced the room. "He's not coming back," he said flatly. "Not now? Not like this." An advisor shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, with all due respect, the optics." "The optics are the problem," William interrupted. "Every time we let emotion dictate our decisions, it ends up on the front page. We cannot afford another spectacle." Catherine watched him closely. She could see the strain in his posture, the tightness around his jaw. This wasn't just royal composure. It was pain disguised as duty. "He's your brother, William," she said softly. "He's alone. You heard his voice. He's not well." William didn't look at her. And how many times have we said that before? How many times have we tried to help him only to be stabbed in the back the next day? The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant. Oprah, Netflix, Spare. Each chapter of Harry's rebellion had exposed another piece of the monarchy's private world. A senior aide cleared his throat. Sir, the king may take a different view. If His Majesty invites him back. He won't, William said quickly. Not if he hears the full story. And there it was, the unspoken truth. There was something more behind William's refusal, something even the closest aides didn't fully understand. A hidden reason he didn't dare share. Catherine leaned forward. You can't punish him forever for telling his truth, she said gently. He's still family. William finally met her gaze. It's not punishment, Catherine. It's protection. Protection from what? She pressed. He hesitated. Then, quietly, from himself. That answer hung in the air. No one spoke after that. Because beneath it, everyone knew there was another layer. Protection of the crown. Protection of secrets. Protection of everything that could unravel if Harry returned now. Meanwhile, outside the palace gates, the world remained oblivious. The public still thought of the brothers' rift as personal, an emotional feud between two men scarred by loss. But inside those walls, it was more than personal. It was political survival. One of the advisors finally broke the silence. Sir, if he insists on returning, we'll need a response plan. Media statements, security, housing. He won't insist, William said firmly. He'll get the message. And yet, the irony was that even as he said it, part of him didn't believe it. He knew Harry, stubborn, emotional, unpredictable. If Harry felt rejected, he'd act on impulse. And impulse was dangerous. After the meeting, Catherine stayed behind. As the others filed out, she approached her husband quietly. You know he'll see this as betrayal. William turned away. It already is. Then why not just talk to him? Face to face. Because I can't trust what he'll do with that conversation, William said. Not anymore. Catherine's eyes softened. He's hurting, well. Whatever's happened between you two, you can't let it in like this. He sighed. You think I don't know that? You think I don't feel it? But every time I open that door, he drags everything we've built into chaos. I won't let him destroy what's left. She didn't argue. She knew when to stop pushing. But she also knew something her husband didn't. Sometimes, trying to save a family by keeping it together only breaks it more. That night, when William finally returned to his private study, he found an envelope on his desk. It was from Clarence House, a briefing prepared by his father's aides. Inside were early reports that Harry had been in contact with British tabloids again, seeking to clarify his situation after the divorce filing. Whether that was true or not didn't matter. Perception did. And perception, in the royal world, is everything. He threw the papers down and stared at the family photo on his desk. Him, Catherine, George, Charlotte, Louis. The image of stability. The image he'd sworn to protect. But across the ocean, Harry was preparing to do the opposite. According to those close to him, Harry wasn't taking the rejection quietly. He'd told a friend, I'll go back whether they like it or not. They can't stop me from seeing my father. That statement, innocent as it sounded, was enough to cause panic behind palace doors. Because if Harry arrived uninvited, without coordination, without royal security, it could cause a media explosion unlike anything since the Oprah interview. So another emergency meeting was called the next morning. Same room, same tension. Only this time, King Charles's private secretary was patched in by phone. His Majesty is concerned, the voice said through the speaker. He wishes to avoid escalation. If the Duke insists on returning, we may have no choice but to allow it under discretion. William clenched his fists. You can't be serious. If he turns up here now, it'll be chaos. Then find a way to stop him, came the reply. Silence. Catherine looked at her husband. You could speak to him again. He might listen. But William shook his head. No, it'll only make things worse. If I talk to him, he'll twist it into something emotional. He'll think there's hope. Isn't there? He didn't answer. That's when one of the aides, an older man who'd served under the Queen for decades, spoke up quietly. Begging your pardon, sir, but if Her Majesty were here, she'd have already found a way to bring them both to the same table. William looked at him for a long moment. My grandmother ruled a different world, he said. This one doesn't forgive mistakes. And there it was, the generational shift. Where Elizabeth had used patience, William used precision. Where she had chosen unity, he chose control. Still, control can't stop a leak. By evening, whispers of the meeting had begun circulating among palace staff. Someone, no one knew who, had mentioned the phrase Harry's denied return. By morning, the tabloids had their headline: William bars Harry's homecoming. The reaction was immediate. Some papers painted William as heartless. Others praised him for putting the crown first. Public debate ignited across the UK. Was this royal duty or royal cruelty? William ignored the noise. He'd weathered worse. But behind closed doors, Catherine watched him retreat into himself. "You're doing what you think is right," she said one night as they sat by the fire. He nodded slowly. "Right doesn't always feel good." She reached for his hand. "Then maybe it's time to stop thinking like a king and start feeling like a brother." He looked up, eyes shadowed with fatigue. "The moment I do that, everything falls apart." And somewhere far away, in a dim hotel room in Los Angeles, Harry was making plans of his own. He decided to fly to London, invitation or not. The ticket was already booked under a different name. But before he could leave, another message came, one that would stop him in his tracks. A friend in London, someone still close to palace staff, sent a discreet warning. "They're ready for you. Don't come." Harry didn't understand. "Ready for me? They've been told to deny you entry to Kensington if you show up unannounced. There's talk of a restraining measure, not legal, just internal. You'll be turned away." For the first time, Harry realized this wasn't about family anymore. It was about control. He wasn't a brother seeking refuge. He was a risk to be managed. He dropped the phone, his heart pounding. So that was it, the meeting that never happened. The one that could have mended years of pain, shut down before it even began. But little did William know, shutting him out wouldn't contain the damage. Because the real explosion wasn't coming from Harry's desperation. It was coming from Meghan's next move, a move that would send shockwaves through both sides of the Atlantic. It started with whispers, quiet, passing mentions in Hollywood circles, agents chatting over cocktails, and PR managers swapping gossip in backrooms. "She's planning something," they said. "Something big." While the world watched Harry unravel across the Atlantic, Meghan Markle was already moving, strategizing, calculating. She wasn't just walking away from the marriage. She was rebranding herself. But what was her endgame? Sources close to her say she felt betrayed by Harry, by the royal institution, by the entire world that once hailed her as the fresh, modern face of royalty. But instead of breaking down, she did what she always does best. She reinvented herself. You see, for Meghan, control of the narrative was everything. For years, she'd watched her story being told by others, editors, biographers, tabloids, even her husband. And now that the divorce was official, she was free. Free to speak, free to shape, free to weaponize her own truth. Reports suggest she began outlining a new project within days of filing for divorce. A documentary, not a soft, emotional tell-all, but an exposé. Something bolder, something devastating. But before we dive into that, let's rewind to the moment it all clicked for her. One afternoon in Beverly Hills, Meghan was spotted at the Polo Lounge, meeting with a familiar face, her former talent manager, who had helped her navigate the early days of Suits. Witnesses say the meeting lasted nearly 3 hours. No lawyers, no publicists, just two people talking strategy. When they left, Meghan's demeanor had changed. Her smile had returned, the kind of confident, camera-ready smile that had been missing for months. That night, she called one of her inner circle. "If they want to silence me," she said, "I'll just get louder." Those who know Meghan describe that as her defining quality. When cornered, she doesn't retreat, she attacks. She doesn't crumble, she recalibrates. And that's exactly what she was doing now. The rumors were relentless. Some claimed she was in talks for a tell-all book deal worth millions. Others said she was working with a major American network on a primetime interview, one that would expose what really happened inside the royal family. But the most explosive rumor came from within her own PR camp. Meghan was developing a documentary series that would not only chronicle her life post-divorce, but would include unreleased footage, audio recordings, and personal letters she had kept since her time as a working royal. Letters that weren't supposed to exist anymore. Letters between her and senior palace officials, and even, reportedly, private correspondence with William and Kate. If true, This could be catastrophic for the monarchy. Meanwhile, back in London, Kensington Palace was already hearing the rumblings. A confidential memo circulated among senior staff outlining potential reputation threats connected to Meghan's post-divorce activities. One line in particular stood out: concerns that the Duchess may possess sensitive material that could undermine royal credibility. That phrase, sensitive material, sent shivers through the palace. Because in the royal world, that could mean anything: financial irregularities, private communications, or worse, family secrets. And here's the irony. While Harry was desperately trying to return home, to rebuild, Meghan was allegedly preparing to burn every bridge left standing. According to one Hollywood insider, she viewed this as her second act, not as a duchess, not as a wife, but as a survivor. A woman reclaiming her story after being erased by two institutions, Hollywood and the Crown. Her first move was subtle. She updated her social media branding, reviving the TIG aesthetic she'd abandoned years ago. Then came the podcast teasers, cryptic audio clips posted by fan accounts believed to be linked to her new media team. Phrases like "her side of the story" and "you've heard their truth, now hear mine." It was classic Meghan, mysterious enough to provoke curiosity, calculated enough to control the conversation. But behind the glamorous marketing and polished statements, there was something darker brewing. People who had worked closely with her during her marriage began receiving NDAs to sign again. Renewals, even for those who hadn't spoken publicly in years. A few refused. One former aide told a reporter anonymously, "She's afraid of what we know." Meanwhile, Meghan's legal team was preparing for another battle: custody. Though the details were sealed, whispers suggested she intended to maintain full custody of the children in California. That alone placed Harry in a difficult position. If he returned to the UK permanently, he could be separated from his children indefinitely. Was that her plan all along? To isolate him completely, emotionally and geographically? It's hard to say, but what's certain is that Meghan's timing was impeccable. The royal family was already in a vulnerable position, balancing public appearances with the king's health issues and William's mounting responsibilities. One explosive allegation could cause irreparable damage to the monarchy's reputation, especially in America, where Meghan still had a loyal fan base ready to defend her. And she knew it. She knew her words would carry weight. She knew that one carefully placed interview, one emotional soundbite, could turn the tide of public sympathy. But it wasn't just strategy, it was revenge. Because while the world saw a calm, poised Meghan stepping out in designer dresses, those close to her described a woman consumed by a need to win. Meghan doesn't lose, one associate reportedly said. If she feels wronged, she'll rewrite the ending. And perhaps that's why she kept everything. The emails, the letters, the recorded conversations. It wasn't paranoia, it was insurance. What did she have on them? What kind of proof could force the royal family into silence? No one outside her inner circle knows for sure. But rumors say it wasn't just about her treatment within the palace. It was about money, contracts, deals that had gone wrong, and allegations of financial manipulation linked to royal charities. Now imagine that. Imagine a headline reading: "Duchess uncovers hidden royal finances." The world wouldn't just gossip, it would explode. Back at Kensington, William reportedly warned his team, "She's not coming after us. She's coming after the institution. But we'll be the ones in the crossfire." And that's exactly what happened. Within days of Meghan's divorce announcement, an anonymous source began leaking snippets of emails to a foreign journalist. Emails discussing royal media coordination and reputational control strategies. The leaks were partial, fragmented, but authentic enough to cause panic. Publicly, Buckingham Palace issued no comment. Privately, damage control went into overdrive. Lawyers, crisis managers, publicists, they all gathered to contain what they could. And in the middle of all this chaos, one person remained silent: Harry. He hadn't spoken to Meghan since the divorce papers arrived. He hadn't spoken to William since the rejection. But he knew, he could feel it, that Meghan was preparing for war. And if she went to war with the monarchy, his name would be on every headline again. So what could he do? Support her and risk being labeled her accomplice? Or stand with his family and face being called a traitor by the woman he once loved? No matter which side he chose, he would lose. And that's when he made a decision that would push everything over the edge. A decision that would lead to a confrontation the world never expected, because this time, Harry wasn't going to stay silent. He was going to fight back. But the way he did it, that's where the story turns from tragic to explosive. How does a bond built on blood and grief shatter so completely? That's the question royal watchers have been asking for years, and yet the answer is always the same. It didn't break in one moment. It fractured slowly, through 1,000 quiet betrayals that no one saw coming. For William and Harry, that fracture began long before the cameras, the interviews, the tell-all memoirs. It started with something simpler. Love and loyalty pulling in opposite directions. When they were boys, they made promises to each other, to their mother. Diana's death didn't just unite them. It bound them in invisible chains. They were supposed to protect one another against everything. The press, the scrutiny, the cold machinery of monarchy. But years later, it was that very machinery that drove them apart. And now here they were, one brother behind palace gates, calculating and controlled. The other alone in California, broken and desperate. After Meghan's divorce filing and William's rejection, Harry was spiraling again. Those close to him said he oscillated between anger and sadness, replaying the call in his mind over and over. The one person he thought would always be there had turned him away. But the cruelest part? He couldn't even hate William for it. Deep down, he understood. Maybe William wasn't acting as a brother anymore. Maybe he was acting as a king in training. A man conditioned to see emotion as weakness, compassion as risk. Still, understanding didn't erase the pain. Harry felt abandoned, betrayed, exiled all over again. He started digging through old photos. Him and Will in uniform, laughing in Africa, clinking glasses at Harry's wedding. It all looked so normal then, so human. But behind those smiles were small resentments that had never healed. William resented Harry's impulsiveness. Harry resented William's coldness. Catherine's quiet composure only amplified Meghan's fiery unpredictability. Every family dinner became a chess game. Every public appearance a performance. After the Oprah interview, something permanently broke. William reportedly told close friends that he could no longer recognize his brother. "He's not the same man," he said. "He's someone else now." But wasn't that inevitable? How could Harry remain the same when his world had changed so violently? He had spent years under constant attack from the press, watching the same institution that once protected his brother hang him out to dry. And yet, in his darkest moments, he still believed they could find their way back. He wrote letters, never sent them, just drafts. Letters full of guilt, apology, hope. "We were supposed to be on the same side," one of them read. He wanted to say those words out loud, but there was no one left to listen. Then something strange happened. Someone leaked fragments of that letter to the media. It appeared in a gossip column. Phrases so intimate, so specific, it could only have come from someone inside his own circle. The press spun it ruthlessly. Harry begs for forgiveness. Prince desperate for reconciliation. The headlines mocked him. They made him look weak. And that's when Harry's sorrow turned to fury. Who leaked it? A friend? A staff member? Or someone in the palace itself, determined to humiliate him further? The betrayal cut deep. It felt coordinated, like every move he made was being watched. Meanwhile, across the ocean, William was fuming for entirely different reasons. He was convinced Harry's side had leaked it to manipulate public sympathy, to make him look cold and unfeeling. "He's playing the victim again," William told an aide. "He knows exactly how this makes us look." The tragedy, of course, was that neither of them leaked anything. Someone else did. A mutual acquaintance who thought sharing the truth might help heal the divide. Instead, it drove the wedge deeper. Within days, both sides were exchanging quiet threats through intermediaries. Tell him to stop talking. Tell him to stop pretending. Tell him to stop leaking. The bond they'd once built on shared pain had turned into open hostility. And yet, behind closed doors, both men still talked about the same thing, their mother. Harry had told a friend, "If Mum were here, none of this would have happened." William had told Catherine the same thing. They both looked backward to find comfort, not realizing that their inability to move forward was the very thing destroying them. But what neither brother knew was that someone inside the palace was using their grief against them. The leaks weren't random. They were orchestrated, small, strategic drops designed to keep the brothers divided. Because united, they were powerful. Divided, they were controllable. And for the palace machinery, Control was everything. So when that private phone call, Harry begging to come home, found its way into the tabloids, it wasn't by accident. It was a warning, a way to remind both brothers who really held the strings. The story spread fast. Prince William shuts the door on brother. Public opinion flared. Morning shows debated whether William had gone too far. Pundits dissected every word, every silence. And there was Harry, watching it unfold from his Montecito living room, his name flashing across the screen again and again. Begged. Rejected. Heartbroken. He switched off the TV. He couldn't stand it. But even then, he refused to believe William was behind it. He'd never do that, he told a friend. He's angry, but he wouldn't humiliate me like this. Except the truth was more complicated. William hadn't leaked it, but he didn't stop it either. When advisors told him the story was spreading, he simply said, "Let it run." Why? Because part of him wanted people to know he wasn't weak, that he wasn't being manipulated, that he was in control. It's ironic, isn't it? The two brothers who once vowed to protect each other were now protecting their own images from each other. Catherine tried to intervene again. She urged William to reach out. "He's hurting," she said. "You'll regret it if you don't try." William looked away. "I've tried." He's chosen his side. And yet, that night, he couldn't sleep. He replayed that phone call in his mind, the desperation in Harry's voice, the way he said home, like it still meant something. It haunted him. Across the ocean, Harry sat alone, replaying the same call for different reasons: the rejection, the coldness, the finality. He too couldn't sleep. Two brothers, both awake at the same hour, staring into the same darkness, neither willing to make the first move. But fate was about to do it for them. Because the leak that followed next wasn't about a phone call or a letter. It was about something far more explosive, something hidden deep in the palace's internal records. Something that, if exposed, could destroy what little remained of their relationship forever. It began as a whisper in the newsroom of a British paper. "There's a document," someone said. Something about William, Harry, and a fund. Within days, it reached the palace. And suddenly, everyone went into crisis mode. William demanded answers. "Who has it?" "Not sure, sir. We're tracing the source." But it was too late. The damage had already begun. Harry got the news first, from a journalist friend who'd reached out for comment. "They're saying there's proof you and your brother argued over money, royal finances, inheritance, even Diana's estate." Harry was stunned. That's ridiculous. Where would they get that from? But deep down, he knew exactly where. There had been arguments about Diana's will, about their inheritance, about the trust funds she'd left behind. The brothers had disagreed on how the money should be handled, especially after Meghan entered the picture. Those discussions had been private, deeply private. If they were public now, someone had gone digging. And the leak was perfectly timed to make them both look selfish, fractured, greedy. When the story broke, public outrage was immediate. Commentators called it a betrayal of Diana's legacy. Both brothers denied it, but the damage was done. That's when the line was crossed. William ordered all direct communication with Harry to cease. No calls, no texts, everything through intermediaries. The divide was now official. Harry found out when he tried to call again and realized the number didn't go through. Blocked. For real this time. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he whispered to himself, "That's it, then." It was over. The brotherhood, the bond, the promise, they were gone. But little did either of them know, the leak that tore them apart wasn't random. It was part of a plan, one that had been set in motion long before Meghan filed for divorce. Someone inside the palace had an agenda, and the next leak would make everything else look like child's play. It always starts the same way inside Buckingham Palace, with whispers. The kind of whispers that travel faster than sound, carried by staffers through marble corridors and over polished floors. A hushed name here, a quiet phrase there, until rumor turns to panic. And this time, the name was Harry. Early one morning, the Royal Communications team was called into an emergency meeting. It was barely 6 a.m. London time when a senior aide burst into the communications wing clutching a tablet. On the screen was a breaking headline from one of the UK's largest tabloids. Exclusive. Prince Harry's emotional plea to William leaked. "I just need to come home." The air left the room. Every detail of the private call between Harry and William was in the article, almost word for word. The emotional phrases, the pauses, Even the part where William said, "It's not a good time." That kind of precision could only mean one thing. Someone inside the royal circle had leaked the conversation. Within an hour, word reached Kensington Palace. William's staff rushed to brief him before he saw it online himself. When he read the headline, his expression hardened. "Who gave this to them?" he demanded. No one answered. Everyone looked down. In royal life, leaks aren't just gossip, they're warfare. And this one cut deep. It exposed a conversation meant to stay buried between two brothers. Worse, it painted William as heartless, cold, unfeeling. Exactly the image he'd been working for years to counter. But there was something else, something even more dangerous. The article didn't just quote the call, it hinted at more. Sources close to the Duke suggest William feared his brother might reveal damaging secrets about the royal household if allowed back to the UK. That line changed everything. Because if that narrative took hold, that William was blocking Harry out of fear, not duty, it could destroy the heir's credibility. Inside the palace, the panic spread. Staff were ordered to check phones, delete old messages, tighten communications. Within minutes, the Queen's former private secretary was called out of retirement for emergency counsel. The royal family was facing a crisis within a crisis, the Meghan storm on one side, and now, the leak that could unravel what was left of their unity. William's first instinct was fury. His second was control. "Lock this down," he told his advisors. "No one speaks to the press, no comment, no denial." But silence was never protection in the age of modern scandal. Within hours, the story went global. CNN, BBC, TMZ, every outlet ran it. William refuses to shelter brother amid divorce. And somewhere in California, Harry woke up to his phone vibrating nonstop. At first, he thought it was sympathy. But as he scrolled through the notifications, his stomach dropped. They'd printed everything. Every word, every plea, even his final line. "I just want to come home." He sat there for minutes, numb. "How could they have that?" he muttered. Then it hit him. The call had to have been recorded. But by who? The phones used by the royal family are heavily encrypted, monitored by palace IT for security. Every call between members of the royal household passes through a protected network, which meant the leak didn't come from outside. It came from inside. Someone with access had listened and sold it. Harry's hands shook. He called the number back, the same one that William had blocked days before. Still blocked. He sent a message anyway. "It's out. They printed everything." "Who did this?" No reply. In London, William was already in a private meeting with the king. Charles looked pale, weary, his eyes heavy with the weight of yet another family implosion. "How bad is it?" he asked. "Bad," William replied. "They've got the call. Almost all of it." Charles exhaled slowly. "We've dealt with leaks before." "Not like this," William said. "This wasn't the staff. This was targeted." "By whom?" William hesitated. "Someone close to him. Or close to us." That was the terrifying truth. They didn't know where the breach had come from. And that uncertainty tore open every old wound inside the palace. Suspicion, mistrust, paranoia. Advisors began whispering about spies within royal staff. Others hinted that Meghan's team could have intercepted the call. But the timing was too perfect, too synchronized. The leak dropped just as Meghan's new PR campaign began ramping up in America. Some believed it was part of her strategy. Make Harry look broken and sympathetic while casting the royal family as heartless villains. Still, not everyone bought that narrative. One former palace official claimed the leak might have been internal sabotage, someone trying to pit the brothers against each other permanently to ensure Harry could never return. Because a divided family is a controllable family. Whatever the truth, the consequences were immediate. King Charles demanded a full investigation. Phones were audited, staff interviewed, communications frozen. A senior aide described it as lockdown behind gold gates. Every email, every call, every text was monitored. And then something unexpected happened. Amid all the chaos, Charles made a call of his own to Harry. It was brief, awkward, strained. "I saw the story," Charles said. "You should stay where you are until things settle." Harry's response was quiet. "I thought I was your son, not your problem." That line hit Charles like a bullet. But the king didn't argue. He simply said, "This isn't the time, Harry," and hung up. After that, silence. The investigation into the leak went deeper than anyone expected. What they found shocked them. A junior member of staff in the communications office had forwarded a transcript of the call to a private email account. That email was later traced to a freelance journalist, one known for connections to Meghan's former PR agency. But when interrogated, the staffer denied everything. "I was told to send it," she claimed. Told by who, they asked. She refused to say. The palace couldn't risk making the story worse by firing her publicly, so they let her quietly resign. But the damage was irreversible. Every call, every message now felt dangerous. The family stopped speaking to each other directly. All communication went through intermediaries. It was as though the monarchy had gone to war with itself. Meanwhile, the tabloids were feeding off the chaos. Royal betrayal. Inside the palace leak. Who spied on William and Harry? Each headline built on the last, turning private pain into global entertainment. William's image took a hit, but not as much as Harry's. The press painted him as unstable, desperate, even manipulative. "A man who betrayed his family now begs for their mercy," one columnist wrote. Harry read it and slammed the paper shut. To the world, he was just a spectacle again, a wounded prince, exiled by choice, rejected by blood. But what no one outside the palace knew was that this wasn't just about a phone call anymore. The leak had exposed more than emotion. It had exposed vulnerability, and the monarchy doesn't survive on vulnerability. Behind closed doors, the king's aides began drafting a contingency plan. If Harry returned to the UK unannounced, security would be alerted. If he tried to make public statements, they'd issue controlled counter-briefings. The message was clear: he was now considered a liability. And yet, there was one person inside those walls who didn't see him that way: Princess Anne. The king's sister, ever blunt, ever unfiltered, reportedly told Charles during a private dinner, "You can't keep shutting him out forever. He's still your son." Charles didn't respond. He just looked away, his expression torn between duty and guilt. And didn't stop there. "You're losing both of them," she said. "One to pride, the other to pain." And she was right. Because while the family scrambled to contain the fallout, William was privately breaking. The leak had exposed his worst fear: that nothing he said or did would ever stay private again. That even his family, his own blood, had become strangers behind glass. He began avoiding calls, public events, even advisors. "I don't know who I can trust anymore," he confided to Catherine one night. Catherine placed a hand on his shoulder. "You can trust me," she said softly. But trust wasn't the problem anymore. Control was. And control was slipping. Because just as the palace thought it had locked everything down, a new leak hit the press. One that would drag the king himself into the storm. This time, it wasn't about a call or a conversation. It was about documents, financial records, private communications, and a secret meeting between Charles and a major foreign donor. And the journalist who broke the